You're listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast, the podcast for communications professionals in the corporate world who are committed to advancing their work and our field's reputation as critical business advisors that are not only invited to the decision-making table, but are required there. I'm your host, Tara McDonough. Hello and welcome to the Communications Business Advisor. We have a special guest today, Stephanie Roberts, who you may have seen around LinkedIn or other places around the world. Stephanie's joining us from Japan today. Stephanie, can you tell us a little bit about what your role is, where you work, what it's like?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, Tara, thanks so much for having me on your podcast. So like you mentioned, I am Stephanie Roberts. I'm the Chief Communications Officer with Hitachi Industrial Equipment Systems. So we are one of the group companies within the Hitachi Limited conglomerate. And I've been with Hitachi Group for over 7 years now.
Oh boy, 7 years. So tell us a little bit about your title, and what does that encompass? Meaning what areas of responsibilities?
Yeah, so basically, as Chief Communications Officer, I cover almost the entire spectrum of communications. So internal, external, executive, crisis, and then also branding, and then some marketing communications as well, such as our website, events, exhibitions, and then social media as well. So it's a pretty broad scope, beyond traditional communications as well.
Yeah, this is kind of what I talk about when I say that CCO role and moving into that role of corporate communications and kind of having that all-encompassing comms field role. And you've successfully gotten that into, a chief communications officer position, which is, I think it's a growing title. I think within our field, people know it, but it's not necessarily normalized within that like C-suite title or roles. And we'd love to get to the place where, as I say often, normalize the chief communications officer, right? Make it standard everywhere. And we have, that's the mission, and you're there. So I know our listeners are eager to learn from you. So I guess I'd start with like, what's the size of your team? How is it structured? Who do you report to? These are some kind of basics.
Yeah, sure. So my journey has changed a little bit, even since I've been in Japan. I've been in Japan for 3 years. I came over as basically what is called a department manager in Japan. That's essentially equivalent to a director level in the
Mhm.
US. And at that time, I was reporting into kind of what they would call a sustainability team. And it's beyond just like sustainability in terms of the environment sense, but also there's like a workplace culture aspect, legal, compliance, and some other functions as well. So my team, the branding and communications team, reported up into this one executive. And that's actually very common in Japan, where they have multiple
Interesting.
functions reporting into one executive. But fast forward to almost a year ago, the communications function broke off into its own standalone function, reporting directly to the CEO. And I'm really grateful for that because at the time, the CEO, he very much understood the importance of communications and advocated for the function. So I think that was the first thing I had going for me. But even now, as of April 1st, we had a new CEO come in. So I still report into the CEO directly, leading the global communications function. And my team, it is a global team. I have over 25 team members. That's both direct reporting and there's some dotted line as well. But I have team members in Japan, US, Europe, China, Southeast Asia as well. So really a global team. And the team, we have kind of four teams within the team, if you will. There's
Mhm.
the corporate communications team. So that's both internal, external, executive, crisis. And then we have a branding team
Mhm.
doing more of the corporate branding. And then we have an events and exhibitions team that's for more of like the trade shows as well as corporate events and such. And then we have a digital team. So they do more of the website, the thought leadership, content development, and social media. So it's a
Okay.
pretty big team.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what's interesting to me is that this field is one where you could say chief communications officer and how that's defined can be so different across functions. It definitely includes a lot of the things that you've talked about, but not necessarily always digital or not necessarily always brand. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so challenging to give a benchmark. I often get asked, like, what's the standard size of a communications team of this particular size organization or this particular revenue? And I'm like, I can give you stuff, but all
Oh,
of the data can be poked, holes can be poked through
sure.
because in my estimation, it's really about building for the business need, not comparing yourselves to how others are staffed, which is very counter to what the business culture tells us to do. Just curious about your thoughts on that. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is this something you've dealt with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're spot on. And even when I talk to my peers, I mean, that's why it's so difficult to answer. I also get a lot of questions like, what's the right number of team members I should have for X size organization? Or like even when it comes to salary benchmarking and such, like there's such a
Mhm.
huge scope. It's challenging for us too to understand what is right or what is wrong or, whatever. But I totally agree with you. And I think it's becoming even more gray, right? As we see, companies kind of adding those plus functions. I think that's what you were kind of getting at
Mhm.
earlier, but where they're adding other functions to the communications or the CCO role
Right.
anyway.
Yeah, I've also seen like community and corporate citizenship and things
Right.
like that folded into the function. Sometimes marketing is even folded under the comms brand. And so it really can be difficult to benchmark, which is why I'm just honest about that with my clients and say,
Mhm.
and their C-suites and say, the reality is we need to build for the business we have and the business we're building, not what some other company does somewhere else. And I think that's the answer to the question of what's the right quote unquote
Yeah.
size, team, scope, function. And that's also a challenge, but it's also the beauty of a function that's building and continuously to evolve into that C-suite role. How did this change over time? Like, how did you change the thinking about what, I guess, sub teams you needed within comms? Has that always been that way? Have you changed that over time?
That has changed over time. It's kind of evolved as the function has evolved. Um, and I think it will keep changing too. I mean, even, a year ago, or I rather, on the team, we had separate teams, if you will, for internal and external.
Hmm.
And they were small. But now this year, I combined that into one corporate communications team because really, I mean, the lines are blurring so much and
Hmm.
there's really, in my view, there's really no more strictly internal and strictly external. I
Mm.
think people kind of toss around the term mixternal, and I think it's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah. It's interesting because that's something that I work with a lot of people on right now, a lot of clients on team structure. And in some ways, it's about looking at shifting things entirely on its head. And this to me is part size of organization, part scope, part like how the organization operates in other departments. But things like eliminating an internal comms department and creating like a content department along with like a business advisory function are things that are moving more and more into the norm. And that said, there's not a right way or a wrong way related to this. It's truly, again, about the function of your individual business. That's not a way that I would suggest a smaller size organization at around the $500 million mark would operate. But once you get to around that $1 billion organization and you have a larger team, you need to start thinking about skills and competencies within your team a little differently. So that's really interesting to know that that has changed and evolved over time. And the concept of, mixternal, which
Yeah.
has definitely become popular in our industry. And when I say communications, I kind of am talking about mixternal because I'm talking, a lot of people assume I mean internal comms. I'm talking about PR, public affairs, internal communications, executive communications, crisis communications, like
Yeah.
corporate citizenship, all areas that I've led. And I actually do believe that they can really work really, really well as one centralized function. That's typically what I recommend when you get to a certain level of function.
I actually feel the same way. I'm a big proponent of centralizing the function. I mean, like you said, if
Mhm.
it's a small company or a huge, $100 billion company or something, maybe something works differently. But in my experience, I've found when the team is actually all together, you can keep the messaging better aligned internally and externally, and it's just far more beneficial.
Agreed. So you told us a little bit about how the CEO at the time, and again with the new CEO, the prior CEO saw the real value of communications and felt like it needed to be in that C-suite role, and that's continuing right now. And such a great nod. All of the women that I know in communications are always like, "Well, I really had a wonderful leader who saw that we needed this position. They saw the value of comms." You're giving the nod to someone else, like all good communicators. But I also want to throw a little spotlight on you and ask you, like, what part did you play in that? Was there a lot of advocacy that you were doing? How were you trying to elevate the function and working with your team to elevate the function so that everyone could see easily that this is a role that belongs in the C-suite. This is a function that belongs reporting to the C-suite.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and I'm definitely guilty of that, as you heard earlier. But it does take work on behalf of ourselves to elevate the function too, and I think, we've talked about this in various ways on LinkedIn and such, but we have to do our job to advocate, educate internally. Often that can be a big part of the job, and I've found, especially working in Japan, I don't want to get into too many details, but the understanding of communications is very different than in the US. I
Yeah.
mean, the maturity level, the understanding much, much higher in the US. So it's taken kind of extra effort to really help people understand what communications is, why we need it, like, the work we're doing to prevent crises from happening, the things they don't
Yes.
see. I mean, that's a huge part of it too.
Yes. I call it editing a business decision so that it's
I
sort of
love that.
like, let's meet the goal, but let's talk about how to do it without a way that's going to create chaos for the business through communicating something that will hit like a lead balloon. But you can't edit the decision if you're not seen as an advisor and you're not in the room to hear what's going on when the conversations are happening.
Exactly. And I think that's a challenge many people face in our industry, right? They're not part of that conversation until it's too late. So I think helping educate the executives about that we need to be in those conversations and continuously reinforce, if you hear of something or if please loop us in, be
Yeah.
our advocates and bring us into the room.
Yeah. I actually just spoke with a client about this earlier today where I said, bring them on your team, ask them, people want to support you. They
Hmm.
want to support each other. So bring them in and say, like, here's how you can help. This is what I want to do. I want to make the business more effective, more efficient. I want to help us meet our goals. I want you to help meet your goals. I want you to meet your goals and I want to help. And talk about, keep an ear out for me in the rooms that I'm not in.
Yeah, exactly.
Ask if I should be in that room when you know that I should be.
Exactly.
Give me a hat tip over here. Let me know. I just feel so strongly that advocacy in a different way than like doing PR for yourself, but using those third parties to advocate for you, and the third parties being your colleagues and
Mhm.
your peers is so critical to being able to advance our field and the people in it, which is, my entire mission in this field. So kudos to you for building that education, that knowledge, that expertise, which I'm sure they're so grateful for now that they have that. And well done in elevating the function in
Thank you.
really anywhere, including the US, but in any, especially in a geographic area where maybe there's some more of a learning curve, particularly in the comms area. How would you describe the reputation of comms at Hitachi? Like, how are you or the team treated, and does this differ from where you'd like it to be, or what's been your path to get where it is?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think because communications, it didn't exist in like a proper function until, 3 years ago, basically, when I came to Japan. I think they were
Mm,
doing some pieces of it, but it wasn't really a full-fledged function. I think there's still times where we are still helping the organization understand, why we need to be involved, where we need to be involved. So there's still some of that education going on, right? And I
yeah.
think that's going to take a long time. And even when you look at communications in the scope of Japan, I mean, a lot of my colleagues tell me the idea of internal communications didn't even really exist 10 years ago.
Mm,
I mean, it's behind in terms of the overall integration into organizations.
mhm.
So, I mean, to answer your question directly, it's not where I would like it to be, of course, but every day we're making strides to get there. And I'm proud of, the steps we have taken, the team has taken to work with our, internal colleagues to help understand, the things we're doing and why we're doing them and such. But it's a continual process.
Well,
And it's going to take a while.
it's never where we want it to be, Stephanie. It's
Yeah,
never gonna
of
be where we
course.
want it to be, but I will say, you are in that C-suite position, so that's and reporting to the CEO, that's like the ideal state for most people in the comms field, because so many say, "If I could just have the seat at the table, it would make all the difference." It does make a huge difference, but I think to your point, it doesn't make all the difference. Like, you're changing cultural mindset as you're elevating a function. And I think that one thing we don't do enough of in this world, which I heard you do, which is terrific, and want everyone listening to do more of this, is celebrate our wins.
Mhm. Yes,
Acknowledge when you've made a gigantic step and remember it when times are tough, because there will
yes.
always be some other thing where it's like, why didn't they involve me? Why did this happen? Or when you're even wrestling within yourself of, how do I measure that business decision that I edited because I was in the room and I prevented a catastrophe? How do you measure that? Just good
Right,
counsel.
right. Yes.
It's sort of like, you know it and you see it. How do you measure it? That's something I consistently wrestle with, and I'm sure most of our colleagues do. Do you have any thoughts on that?
This is a tough one.
This is the toughest question I think I ever ask anyone, and the only thing I can come up with is like anecdotal stuff. Like,
Yeah.
but the anecdotal stuff can be powerful when you hear someone say like, "Well, because you advised us of that, like our contract negotiations were easier with that company and we got more favorable negotiations done, which saved the company $60 million. Or because you told us not to do this, we didn't get a call from regulators.
Mhm.
We definitely would have had we, continued down the path we were on." So much anecdotal stuff. And that just, I think have to recognize part of this field is art and part of science. Lean into the
Yeah,
science, but recognize the art and be honest about it.
exactly. I think that's a challenge, an eternal challenge, I guess, is how do we really, tie the value, the measurement to some of those things? And
Yeah.
yeah.
This is the toughest question I think that we continuously address in this field, because we'll consistently talk about metrics and measurement. But we also, I think, as a field, need to acknowledge that not everything can be measured in a statistical way. Some of the things are, it's like when it snows outside and you see it out your window, do you need to walk outside and touch the snow to know it's there?
Mhm.
No, like, you see, it just snowed a foot. Like,
Mhm.
it snowed. It's sort of like it when you see it. We just can't lean into that too much as like, well, I just know what I'm doing and just trust that,
Yeah,
because that's how we fail, right? But we do
yeah.
have to acknowledge the art and recognize it with our peers.
Yeah, totally. And I think, looking at if behaviors have changed, things like that, those are things we can look at. But to your point, not everything can be measured or has a KPI. And I think that's a challenge for me personally, working in Japan, especially, things are very KPI driven, but it's
Mm,
like not everything has a clear cut, percentage or metric or
right.
whatever.
This is going to be the next great measurement challenge for our field, I think, measuring the things
Okay.
that go undone,
Mm-hmm.
because of your critical counsel. And we'll see what happens with that. Challenge to the field, whoever can figure it out, let us know.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
consider it this your personal challenge. I'd love to ask, what skills do you think are critical for people at your level? Like, how would you encourage people to work on advancing those skills to get to where you are?
I think one of the biggest ones is probably the ability to build relationships. I think once you reach a higher level, I mean, depending on your team size, right? You're not going to be as in the weeds and, doing the tactical, right? But it's
Mm,
more maintaining those relationships with other executives, with the CEO, obviously, with, people externally as well. So that relationship building, that's a big one. I also think, it's you have to have some tenacity and some, um, the ability to, you know, kind of be a truth teller in some ways. Like
mm,
you often have to come to the room and say things that other people aren't willing to say, at
yeah,
least to be valued in your role. I mean, and to be an effective comms leader, you have to be willing to say those things people aren't
yeah.
willing to.
Nobody wants to be the one that calls the cops at the party, but sometimes we have
Right.
to call the cops to keep everybody safe. And sometimes we're also, by the way, we get to be the life of the party sometimes as well.
Yeah, that's the other side. Yeah,
That's the other side. That's the great side. But yeah, if you're not willing to say what needs to be said, then you're really not doing your duty. You're
exactly.
to the organization, to yourself, to the team. And if it's, I would say if it's not hard at times to stand by your values and your ethics and essentially which is connected to our roles, then you're not doing it right. It
Right.
should be hard.
Yeah,
It should be hard
exactly.
to say the hard things. And their relationships, to your point, are the things that are going to help you get through that and be seen as the person who's helping the organization, not trying to do harm to anyone or make people uncomfortable.
Mhm. Exactly. I mean, I think there's a lot of things, a lot of qualities, but those are probably the top 2, I would say, that, are really important at this level.
I have a big one. This is going to be like the magic question that everyone's like, tell me the how to do A to Z, roadmap for this, and I will follow it to a T. How do you advocate for budget and resources? That's the question.
You're asking all the tough questions today. I think this is always a challenge in our field too. I
Yeah,
think none of us ever have the budget or the amount of resources that we would like, but I think it kind of ties back to the value you're bringing to the organization, the results you're bringing to the organization. No one can just go to the CFO and say, I need, 6 new people with no explanation. So you
100%.
have to, really help them understand what the purpose, the value of that is. Um, like right now, maybe I'm just making up a hypothetical, but maybe I would say, hey, I think we need a new headcount focused on public relations, media relations, and here's why. Because the impact on AI, do we want to be found in all of these generative AI searches or not? I
Right.
mean, this is the reality, right? We have to put a lot more effort on earned media, at least for right now,
Mm-hmm.
if we want to
100%.
show up. So,
Yeah. That's in fact changed my strategy as well for my own business. So you're speaking
sure.
my language here, which leads me into kind of an important topic related to like the future of our field. You know, AI and search results and things like that are definitely one key thing. I think AI and how we even approach our work, and also teaching other people that no, please don't do, you can't do all writing with ChatGPT. Please don't send me your ChatGPT and tell me to send it out to my
Oh,
colleagues.
no.
Oh my God. I know. See, the people out there are saying, yes, I agree. That happened to me. I know a lot of people are
Yeah,
saying that
every
right now,
day, I'm
every
sure.
day. So, with this changing business environment, the changing global environment, changing technologies, changing political environment, even, if there's one thing consistent, there's change. And if we're experts at anything in this field, it's change.
Yep.
What do you see as the top challenges and opportunities for our field?
I think, well, opportunities, that one's pretty easy. Like every day that we watch the news, we're seeing crises or potential crises. And It really reiterates the importance of having a communications team or at least a communications professional within your organization because
Mm,
there's risks all around us. I mean,
mm.
recently we all probably saw about the concert and the executive, right? And
Just gonna
like who would
say,
expect that to happen? But crises are everywhere.
I so want Coldplay to be back on the map for their excellent music and concerts.
I know, right?
I went to
Uh,
the one in Vegas, by the way, which was
did
amazing.
you? Nice.
Yeah, so I just was like, well, this is terrible. I want Chris Martin to be known for his concerts and his
Right.
vocals and his music, not
Yeah.
not this. But yeah, it did, and I was avoiding even posting about it on LinkedIn until finally it was like, all right, let's just turn this into an evergreen moment of learning for everyone. Here's what I know. Here's what people are asking me related to
Sure.
Coldplay. But yeah, you're right. It could who could have seen that coming?
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm sure their comms team didn't, right? Like,
Right.
who would expect that? But I mean, there's just so many things like that that could happen. I mean, that's the reputation, the crisis aspect, but internal comms too. I mean, we're all seeing the studies that, employee engagement being so low. And I don't know the exact percentage to
Yeah.
quote, but it's just very low. I mean, we have to find ways to keep our employees engaged and informed. And, that's not communications alone, of course.
Right.
We can't, we're not the culture people alone, but
Right.
we do play an important role in that. So, I
Yes.
mean, no matter how you look at it, communications, there's so much opportunity for us. I think the challenge is that can go the same way, right? There's so many. We were talking a bit about AI, right? But AI also brings a lot of risks,
Hmm.
and we have to think about the ethics perspective of that too. And so, I mean, there's a lot of challenges because things are changing so much. I think the expectations of the comms function keeps changing as well. There's more expected of us. It's no longer just, knowing about the communications functions alone. Now you need to be, more of the business advisor, like you were
Right.
saying. You need to understand a little bit about the other functions to come to the room and, know what you're talking about,
Mhm.
understand what's going on in the other functions. So I think that's an opportunity and a challenge, but it's just we all have to know that we have to upskill ourselves and basically to be go beyond just the box of communications.
Yeah.
So
And that can be exhausting, which I think is part of what you're acknowledging here. We came out of COVID and in the US at least, and even in other parts of the world, the George Floyd murder and the all of the movements that have been going on with Black Lives Matter and with Stop Asian Hate and with then the war on DEI and all of these things. It's sort of like, where is my head tilting, right? All of these communicators came out of COVID thinking, well, if I could manage that, I could do anything. And now we're
mhm.
still trying to like run and
Yeah.
catch up. And I think it can be tiresome. So
Right.
I don't know if you have a message of hope or solidarity for our peers out there on that note. I would love to say, I hear you guys, I'm with you, but it is so worth it. Like, if you love this field, your value does not go unnoticed. And if it does, and it's just for a passing moment, and that I see you, right? We see you in this field.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, the importance of communication, it's never been higher than right now. I think that's something that's really promising for all of us. Communications it used to be kind of a nice to have, but now I think there's really an understanding, even more so globally, a global understanding of the importance of communications. That's why we're seeing more CCO roles.
Mm,
I think it's finally getting elevated because people are finally starting to understand the importance. So, I mean, I certainly understand the importance of the work that we do, everyone listening to this podcast, and I can appreciate and respect that. And I know other people do as well.
yeah.
And, it's just kind of finding the right organization that also values it because you and I both know not every
Mm,
organization does, but
yeah.
many do. And you will find that organization where you can thrive.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, like, there's some people like me, gluttons for punishment. I love a skeptic. I don't love somebody who's made up their mind about how comms should be treated, where it should sit in the organization, and what you should expect from them. But I do love one who's kind of like, wait, what? I should be expecting more of you. I should be asking for more. I should be, you know, considering you a critical advisor that needs to be in the room, not just is invited to the room. I love that challenge, because then when you change one executive, you change them everywhere they go moving forward. And
Exactly.
that changes our field. So for some of you, if you have a skeptic, consider it a fun game. This is your
Mhm.
challenge. And if you have somebody whose mind is made up, then maybe it's time to get out, find your path
Exactly.
out, because they're wrong and they don't know it. Is there anything else I didn't share that you think you love for this audience, for comms leaders and emerging leaders to know or think about as they think about the future of our field or the path to becoming a CCO?
Yeah, I think one important note is what I always try to tell, people that I mentor or my peers, just always be the person that's willing to do some of the hard things. I think
Mm,
that will really help you stand out in the field. I mean, for me personally, when I had this opportunity to come to Japan, it really happened because I raised my hand and said I'm interested. And I
mm,
think this opportunity has basically accelerated my career
mhm.
faster than I ever thought. And I mean,
Right.
that's not a guarantee for every person, but I think by showing that proactiveness and the willingness to do things that other people aren't willing to do, that's going to help you stand out in the field. So I think that's
I
one
love
of the
that.
biggest takeaways I can give to people.
I love that. Don't afraid to stand out. This has been great, Stephanie. If you haven't followed Stephanie Roberts on LinkedIn, I encourage you to go find her. You'll find us chatting on each other's posts regularly.
Always, yes.
Uh, one of my LinkedIn besties over here, we will put the link to her profile in show notes so that you can follow her content. And we really look forward to having you again sometime in the future, maybe telling us more about all things Japan and what it's like advocating for a function in a geographic region that is still learning and growing. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for your
I'd
time.
love to. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Tara.
Well, I could keep talking to Stephanie for hours, but we don't have that time. So, this is the end of the Communications Business Advisor episode for this week. Tune in next time. I'm going to be talking with more leaders in the communication field as we talk about the path to that C-suite position. Tune in next time. Until then, keep advising. If you're interested in working with me to advance your work and your team's reputation as critical business advisors, never order takers, check out taramcdonough.com. Thanks for listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a rating or a review. It helps people find us, and we can't ignite a movement without sharing the message. See you next time, where we'll continue to do the work to elevate our field's reputation and elevate the careers of the people in it. I created Raise the Tide to help elevate our field and the women in it. It's part community, part coaching, part professional development, and part mentorship. It encompasses all of these things because it takes all of these things to rise in your career. I asked a few Raise the Tide crew members to share what their experiences have been like in the program, and here's what they had to say. What would you tell someone who's interested in joining?
Do it. It honestly is probably one of the best things I've ever done for myself in my 20 plus year career.
I have received such benefit from this group. I cannot actually express it.
Invest in yourself. I really started this group because it was time for me to invest in me.
To anyone who's interested in joining Raise the Tide, I'd say the return might even end up being well beyond what you might expect. I walked in hoping for some professional clarity, and I've gotten that but also stayed for the growth and the support and the connection that has come to mean so much to me.
If you're interested in this program, head on over to taramcdonough.com and complete the Raise the Tide form. A rising tide raises all ships, but we're not the ships. Together, we're the force of the tide, raising the ships for our entire industry.